Hi, guys, and welcome back to Before the Vote. My name is Bella Gentry. I'm your host, and today we have another Teen Talk episode. Today I am joined by two very special guests. I'll let them introduce themselves in a minute, but today's topic is teen participation in government through youth and government programs. So that is what we're going to be discussing today. So, welcome to my guests. Thank you for taking the time to be here.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you so much.
Do y'all wanna go ahead and introduce yourselves? And, yeah, just say your name so everybody knows your voices.
I'm Sarah.
I'm Emery.
Okay, great. So, the first question is one that I ask all my guests, and it's, why do you believe teen participation in politics and government is important in today's world?
I think that being involved in politics is really important as a teen because we are like the next upcoming generations that are going to be making these important decisions for the future when it comes to politics. I mean, we are the future of politics. So the quicker we learn kind of the basics and get deeper in our knowledge of it, the better we will be prepared for the future and to kind of help society as a whole and just overall help in general.
That's so true. And I feel like a lot of people think that being involved in government and knowing about politics isn't really important until you have to vote. But when you get to that point and you turn 18, if you really haven't been learning about politics, it's hard to start then. It's easier to have a more well rounded opinion, to know yourself and your preferences and beliefs if you've kind of been not necessarily like studying up, but paying attention.
Yes, I agree with what both of you said. There's a bunch of benefits to participating in politics or just even educating yourself when you are a teen and not able to fully exercise the right to vote and everything like that, just because you will be prepared, like Sarah was saying, when the time does come. And you also just be better informed and better able to have discussions with others and just know what's going on in your world, which is just important for anybody, no matter what their age is. So, my next question is kind of catering more towards our topic for today's episode, and that is, what youth and government programs have you been involved in, and what does each program entail?
I have been involved in mock trial and youth in government, as I think Sarah has as well. And mock trial takes a dive into the judicial side of government where you have a case and there's attorneys and witnesses, and you try to figure out and pose your side and try to win your case. And then youth legislature is more so the Senate and House and legislative side. And there you get to write bills and you get to debate them. And it's really fun.
Yeah, so like Emory, I've also done mock trial and youth leg. I also went to Girls State this summer, which is basically a program where they pick, I think the ranges were 1 to 3. It depends on the population of your senior class. They send a couple representatives and you go meet on a college campus for a week during the summer. And it's kind of like an extended government program. It's kind of stretched out to where there's a lot of different things happening. Girl State and Boy State are different, I've found, but in my experience at Girl State, the main priority of a lot of the girls was elections. So elections pretty much lasted all week. You kind of pick what position you want to run for in the beginning. And then those election announcements are announced the night before we leave for most offices. And there's a couple offices that they elect at the beginning just for functionality reasons.
Yes, so I've also been involved in the youth legislature and mock trial program. And just to note, both of those programs are put on by the YMCA, and then they take place in a bunch of different states, not just Alabama, as does Girl State and Boy State. So those are kind of national things that anybody can take part in as well. But yeah, it's lots of opportunities to get involved in government and to learn about them through those programs. So that kind of ties into my next question, which is, what have you learned or gained from being involved in these programs that you just talked about?
Personally, I have gained a lot of insight as to kind of how processes actually function. I'm personally not a big history girl, and so when I sit in on a history lesson in school, it's really hard for me to visualize what kind of happens and kind of the process. and of just the government in general and kind of how things are ran because it's a lot of numbers and not a lot of actual visualization of what's happening. And I found that actually going and seeing the process and being involved in it myself has really helped inform me on things that have been difficult for me to understand in school. And overall, it's also raised my want to be involved in government and politics because going into youth legislature, I found that there's a lot of interesting topics that are talked about that aren't really on the news that are really important to me. And I've found that it's a good way to kind of get your voice out there early on these smaller topics and get to make connections with those people and kind of even spread your own insights into a issue that is important to you.
Definitely. I think especially like how you were saying at youth legislature, they try and keep it as true to the processes that happen in our state government as they can. The way that I explain youth leg to someone that's never been is you pretend to be a politician for a couple days. You pretend to be a lawmaker. And it is really cool the amount of niche bills and issues that come from all around the state because so many schools do it and so many different communities are a part of those topics and of those discussions. While you're learning about the process of government, you're discovering your own beliefs, kind of like what Emery was saying.
And I agree definitely with what Sarah said, as it helps you kind of form your own views. One thing I also really like about youth legislature is, like she said, a bunch of people are coming from a bunch of different areas that come from different backgrounds. And I think one thing that is really important in politics is understanding multiple sides of the story and has helped me to kind of grow those sides. And I think overall, like Sarah said, in the future, I think this will be very beneficial because it will help us learn to see different perspectives and overall kind of unite politics through the use of meeting people from different areas because it's really important to kind of get that feel and realize that there are different viewpoints in the reasoning behind this.
I will say one more thing. I think what is so special about Youth Leg and other government programs is you can stand up and you can talk about why you shouldn't vote for this bill, why I don't share this belief with the bill author, or why you should vote for this bill. And everyone that is disagreeing, like I don't share that opinion. You can say that, but then 30 minutes later, you're at lunch break and you're sitting with all the people that you might not share those beliefs with, but you're understanding them as people before you're understanding them as a viewpoint or as what their opinion is. And sometimes it's hard to find that middle ground just when you're talking about politics every day. But finding a place where you can respectfully have those conversations is, I think, really key and something that a lot of people miss. And I would encourage to try and find an outlet where you can do that.
Yeah, those are some great points. I agree with everything that you guys brought up, especially the part about just seeing the process at work, because I think when you're learning about how like the Senate and the House works when you're in government class or history class or whatever, it can be hard to visualize it and it can be hard to just kind of understand how things really take place. So just being in it yourself allows you to really get a better picture of what's happening so that you best understand how your government works and how things are past that affect you. And like Sarah was saying, it also has allowed me to make a lot of different connections with people that I would have never met otherwise, people from different areas, or even from my area that I just have been able to form bonds with based off of a shared passion in government and law and things like that, which has been a really cool experience. And it's just been cool to have these kind of like adult conversations with these teens and just have been able to participate in these programs and, pretended to be an attorney or pretended to be a representative when I never would have been able to do that otherwise. And it's taught me a whole lot about how the judicial system works and how the legislative system works as well. So, definitely a very beneficial thing overall. And leading into that, I wanted to ask, how has being involved in these programs changed how you view your role in government?
I think for me, something that I learned throughout kind of watching different processes of government, and even with Girls State, there are so many different ways to be involved in government that aren't like running for Senate or doing something huge that seems so intimidating. I think being involved in government is something that seems out of reach and unapproachable for a lot of people. Like at Girls State, we elected, I think, like 200 different positions because we elected everything from like city mayor to governor of the state and all of the positions in between and like circuit courts and little things that people don't really know about. And then there's also things that aren't elected, like lobbying. And then if you want to look deeper, journalism is also a separate entity from government, but there's a lot of fingers in the pie about influencing people and their opinions and how the government functions based on how people use their opinions, if that makes sense. So I think it's just taught me that there's not just one outlet, and I think that's been beneficial.
Being involved in these programs has really just shown me that even I, a person who really is not into history and government and doesn't take these advanced classes in history and is more kind of science oriented, that I can still be able to be beneficial in this area and bring in new topics, and that my voice does matter and my vote matters, and that I am able to relate to a bunch of people through differences, and I'm just overall able to bring my voice forward, which is something that can be really hard to do sometimes, especially in society today. And I feel like I'm able through these programs to come forward without judgment because everyone's kind of there with the same base of learning. Like we're all united in this way of learning about the government and really just connecting.
For me, one thing that I've gained from participating in the youth and government program is that teens really care about politics, and that's something that I didn't really realize before going into it because, I go to these conferences and then there's hundreds of kids that are coming there because they care about law and because they care about policy, and they're there wanting to make change. So it's taught me that teens really do care and really do want to make change no matter what the media says or anything like that. I mean, like, the people are there for a reason. And it's taught me that there are outlets for those passions because these kids are involved in all kinds of things that I never even knew about. And also just learning about the legislative process through the Youth Legislature Conference has shown me that there is a role for teens to play in the legislation process, especially through like lobbying or just bringing in speakers to speak on a bill or whatever that may be. Just in these actual processes in real life, a representative can bring in a teen to vouch on a bill and to give their perspective on it, and that'll support or decline their argument. So there's a role for everybody, and people have passions for this, and there are outlets for them to express it. So I think I've just gained a greater sense of the importance of teen participation in politics and also the want of teens to participate in it through these programs. My last question quickly is, what advice do you have for someone who is wanting to get involved in youth and government programs?
I would say personally, just do it. I mean, I know that's kind of cliche, but just get interested. One thing that has really benefited me when I was first going into these programs is talking to people who have done it before. Because it can be kind of scary going in and only knowing it from a teacher's perspective, which is kind of the orderly, factual side of it. But talking to people who've already been to it was very helpful in learning that it's not that scary. It's not as scary as sometimes it may sound, and that it's really what you put into it. That's the one thing with youth legislature that everyone says is that you will get out of it what you put into it. If you don't feel like putting that much, but you still want to go and learn, you still can, or you can pour your whole heart out and really try as hard as you can. But I feel totally that if you want to get involved, talk to people and make these connections and start researching. Maybe if you're going to mock trial, start researching that process. Or if you're going to youth legislature, start thinking about topics that you might want to write a bill on or other topics that you might be interested in talking about. And so that is my advice for anyone that wants to get into it.
I think I would say try your best to find those opportunities for yourself, kind of like Emery was saying. Something that I have learned is that, not all schools have a youth legislature program or a mock trial program. But I know that at least in Alabama, the Y will, if you just want to go without a school sponsor, you can contact like the headquarters and they can set something up for you. Or even I know in previous years when some states didn't have a conference, like during the pandemic, we did a virtual one. We had like ambassadors. I'm holding up air quotes, but you can't see it. We had ambassadors from other states that would come in and participate. And then also, I believe that every state in America has a boy state and a girl state. So that is also something that you can get involved in. Just don't be afraid to go and try it. And even if you're feeling like a little iffy about it, I was definitely someone that was scared about coming, that was scared about participating. I thought that people would think that I sounded stupid when I was talking on bills, but in my experience, I've always had a supportive community, and don't be afraid to take chances. Don't be afraid to stand up and speak on a bill or even run for office because you never know where you might end up.
And kind of going off of what Sarah said, I was also very scared of going into these programs. But now that I'm in the programs, one thing I regret is not going sooner. So I feel like the earlier you do it, the more you'll get out of it and the more you'll find that, wow, this is such a great program. And I totally wish that I could have gone back a couple of years and started earlier to grow more with these programs because, you know, the more you do it, the more you're going to grow with it as you go through school. So that's another piece of advice I give is start early even if you're scared because you'll regret it if you don't.
Yeah, and that kinda ties in with what I was gonna say, and just I think my piece of advice is to just take it in and realize the value of the experience because, no matter what program you're doing, even if it's like a local program, like a junior city council or something, realize the value of being able to learn from people who are in those positions and from being able to mirror them in their positions and just try to soak up everything that you can from these experiences and just try and keep an open mind and learn from others, learn from people who have different perspectives from you, and learn from the process itself to just become a more well-rounded person and will just kind of soak a fire in you for further pursuing these kind of things and pursuing government and pursuing politics and pursuing policy in general. So that is my piece of advice. Those are all the questions I have. So thank you, Sarah and Emery, for joining me today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Bye, guys. Hey everyone, I just wanted to say thank you again for listening to this episode of Before the Vote and the final installment of the Teen Talk series. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have, and I wanted to extend another thank you to Sarah and Emery for joining me to chat about this topic. I also wanted to let you guys know, as always, that there is a survey linked in the description box below. It's an anonymous Google form where you can let me know how you enjoyed this video and if it accomplished the goals that I'm hoping that it did. So it would be so helpful if you could just go to the description box and fill out the survey. It'll take maximum 2 minutes and it's completely anonymous. So please go fill out that survey. And thank you again for listening, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye, guys.